Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another Jupiter Training for Leaders, part of the Bighorn Leadership Professional Development. Today we're going to be talking about Book 2, It's Your Ship. Before we get started, just a few of the general disclaimers. The views presented are those specifically of me and do not necessarily represent the beliefs, opinions, views of DoD or its components. We're using the fair use doctrine as well, meaning that discussing a book for research, scholarship, teaching, reporting, comments, criticism, etc. is allowed, and the educational context within this because we are utilizing it within the leadership professional development. I'm excited for everyone to be here. Thank you for joining us. Again, as we go through these, if anyone wants to reach out to me specifically for any in-person LPDs, I'm happy to do that. It is difficult in this format where it's really just a presenter and then the people receiving the information. So if you want an actual in-depth discussion on anything, please reach out. Part of this as well, when we go through these different questions on the bottom of the slide, there's going to be the italics for the questions to take back to your soldiers. When we go through these, just remember those. You can write them down. You also have the slides, so you can always take a screenshot, take a picture, whatever you want to do. Those are for self-reflection in the future. Those questions are intended to take back to your soldiers, to anyone else that you are engaging with leadership professional development in. So feel free to go ahead and do that. It is difficult in terms of the discussion that it's going to be very one-sided, as in me providing information to you. But again, hopefully you're able to follow along, and hopefully this is helpful in some regard for the future. It is, again, born out of the Bighorn Leadership Professional Development, really what we wanted to do in terms of creating the culture and rebuilding Bighorn in a number of great ways. So let's jump into it. Jupiter Training for Leaders, Commanders LPD, Book 2 discussion. We're specifically talking about It's Your Ship. As always, 169 is on time, on target, every time. So part of the reason I chose the book from the Navy is we need to branch out, pun not intended, but that did fit perfectly. We need to look at the other parts of the military and where leadership is key, where leadership is actually going on in terms of teaching, receiving information, implementing change and solutions. So I wanted to select a book from a captain in the Navy who did an excellent job and who actually was able to write about his experiences. Don't forget, I trust my chiefs. I innately trust my chiefs. They're the ones on the firing line. They're the ones in that launcher as the last check before flipping the switch and sending those rounds downrange. In that ownership aspect, they own all of the things that go on within their launcher, similar to a ship. I know it's not a one-for-one comparison, but it is a way in which we're looking at It's Your Ship in terms of our leadership professional development at Bighorn. The bluff here is our chiefs are in charge of their own ship, so seeing how cross-training, enabling those responsible for equipment, allowing leaders, specifically chiefs and gunners and box operators, to own their development is a key leadership trait. Also, it's insanely hard to instill in others for someone else to take ownership. That is from within. That is intrinsic to that individual. So the focus is how a successful captain was able to empower the whole ship to buy into their ownership and share of the mission. It wasn't a top-down philosophy, but it was a top-down enablement for lower enlisted to actually own the mission. So we're showing those junior officers, specifically in the Army, that there's other branches that have great leadership programs, and there's a positive leadership development throughout the armed forces. Again, 3 big takeaways. Top 3, listen aggressively and communicate with purpose. 2, go above and beyond, take risks. We'll get into a little bit more later about those specific risks. We're not talking about a snap decision or a one-off judgment. We do need to be willing to take that risk, though. Number 3, the Washington Post test. So as we go through this, if we were in a setting where we're actually having a discussion for the LPD, then we're going to go through this specifically. Here, we're just going to have a roadmap in terms of what I think is important in terms of our own mindset as we walk through these examples. How do we cultivate trust in Bighorn? Is the Washington Post test an actual good metric? What is the difference between a prudent risk and an unnecessary risk? When we step out of a leadership role specifically change of responsibility, change of command, platoon leader changeover, platoon sergeant changeover. Is the 6 months to 12 months metric a proper and or helpful way to view success as a leader? If we aren't listening aggressively, what are we actually doing instead? As an organization, are we comfortable with 1. Failure? 2. Listening to soldiers when better ideas are presented? 3. Allowing soldiers the space to grow when it is painful for higher levels? 4. Taking the heat or the hit as appropriate from higher levels in order to allow soldier development. Those are things I think are important to have in our minds as we go through this. So let's look at the high-level takeaways from It's Your Ship. Again, if you've read the book, these shouldn't be new to you. If you haven't read the book, please reach out. We can get you connected. I think these are a number of items that are high-level takeaways for us in Bighorn to implement. Again, from the naval perspective, so we'll change them into the Army perspective, but these are taken from the book. Number 1, the problem is the solution. Number 2, listen aggressively. Number 3, communicate purpose and meaning. 4, create a climate of trust. 5, look for results, not salutes. 6, take calculated risks. 7, go beyond standard procedure. 8, build up our people. 9, generate unity. 10, the Washington Post test. So let's dive into the high-level takeaways. The problem is the solution. So soldiers have many ideas on how to improve specifically Bighorn and the mindset around the battery, and also how to operate more efficiently. So a key to success is for us as leaders to listen to soldiers at all levels and then take it another step further and say we're empowering that soldier at that level to own their work. So in order for that specific soldier to be able to implement what they think is better or more efficient, they actually can own it. So as us leaders, empowering that soldier to actually do that task. And again, that goes back to, are we comfortable with failure if this does fail? And are we comfortable taking the heat and being the ones as the leader saying, yes, I let this happen. Also, it wasn't my idea. They get all the credit. That soldier gets all the credit for implementing it. And I am taking all of the risk and all of the heat if it doesn't work out. So the lesson is leaders look to our teams for solutions, and we trust our team to take ownership of their own work. The italic question here is, how have we listened to soldier-generated solutions to address persistent problems? How have we listened to soldier-generated solutions to address persistent problems? Let's talk about listening aggressively. Part of listening aggressively is actually being engaged as that leader. We are going through the battery and listening to soldiers within Bighorn and what they are actually trying to accomplish. So listening aggressively is asking questions and listening in a way to gain insight while we're improving our specific Bighorn operations. Part of this is, it's not a one-sided dialogue. It is one-sided in terms of we're letting someone speak and we are listening when they're talking, so we're not interrupting. But it is multidimensional in terms of receiving information, providing information, saying, hey, I'm actually listening because I'm asking a question in order to understand how this insight will be valuable and how we're going to implement that within Bighorn. So the lesson and the takeaway for listening aggressively is leaders should be actively engaged with our teams, and leaders should be willing to listen and discuss ideas and concerns. I underline discuss ideas and concerns because I think it's important that we also have the dialogue as we're listening. Having that dialogue with our soldiers enables soldiers to be heard very specifically about what they want to implement. And again, it's their idea. Let's have them implement their idea. It's the ownership within that change. So we're there to support it. We're there to take the heat, but they get all the credit. The question here to think about is, what insights have I gained listening to our soldiers while generating solution-oriented actions? The question, what insights have I gained listening to our soldiers while generating solution-oriented actions? Let's talk about communicating with purpose and meaning. The Army, some time ago, had this huge implementation of task and purpose. That's a very specific to the Army example. However, if we extrapolate that, it's really about clarity. What is the clear task and purpose? What is the clear purpose and meaning? What is the clear end state and intent? What is the mission? It's all about clarity. And then from that clarity, we can then implement different subsets of what we're talking about. If we look at Bighorn's vision, it should explain how each one of us, from commander all the way down to that lowest level driver, not lowest level in terms of not meaning, but lowest level in terms of they are so far from what the top is disseminating for information, for vision, for mission, they should still be able to understand it clearly. So let's bring it back. Sharing the vision for Bighorn and explaining how each one of us within Bighorn fit within the overall vision and how it inspires our team to work towards the common goal. That chief, that driver, that gunner, they all have a very specific goal. That fits within Bighorn's overall goal. That fits within our higher intent and our higher headquarters and everything else. But here specifically, we're talking about distributing that clear purpose, that clear meaning. So the big lesson and takeaway from the book is leaders are communicating in a clear purpose, clear vision to the team and ensure each soldier, all individual soldiers, understand how their individual contribution aids in achieving the vision. So many times within the military, we have those buzzwords. We have the joke about, oh, somebody's just going for an OER bullet, and that's why we're calling something by a different name now. We're doing the same thing. It's just a different name that we've come up for it. That is irksome for so many reasons and so many levels. If something is clear, we should not change it. If something is actually within the vision and clearly distributed down to each soldier at the lowest level, that shouldn't be changed. So let's ask ourselves, are we actually having clarity within those discussions at all levels? So the question, the takeaway, the thought here in the italics at the bottom, remember task and purpose, intent and end state. How is this mirroring that mindset within our unit? The question, takeaway, the thought, remember task and purpose, intent and end state. How is this mirroring that mindset within our unit? We talk a lot about trust within Bighorn, and Bighorn has a lot of previous issues with trust between soldiers, between higher levels, between commanders. I'm not trying to get away and saying we've never had issues within Bighorn. I know we have. First Sergeant and I really want to create that climate of trust. And a huge part of what we want to do as leaders is supporting subordinate leaders. We want to support everyone else so that they also have that trust. Remember, trust is something that is earned. Somebody doesn't just walk in and innately say, I trust everyone 100% completely all the time, always. That's a fallacy. So creating that climate of trust is important in terms of it's a deliberate action, a deliberate choice in how we are actually holding people accountable, how we are holding ourselves accountable, and how we are distributing that trust throughout the unit. So the takeaway is accountability and ownership are utilized to foster trust within the unit. Again, it's your ship. That ownership goes along with, hey, I am accountable to myself because this is my idea and it's making this unit better. So we're allowing those decisions at all levels. And here's the key too. Those lower levels are autonomous. So those decisions and autonomy for those lower levels are how we're creating that trust within our teams. Again, I trust my chiefs, which also means I trust what they're doing, which also means I trust that they are going to raise their hand and say, I need help. I messed up. I'm really struggling. It also means they're going to raise their hand and say, I have a better way to do this, or I've thought about this in a different way, or could we implement this and see how it works out for that next fire mission? The lesson is trusting our teams, allowing that team to make the decision based on their own individual autonomy. The lesson for leaders is allowing teams to be teams. That ground level insight far surpasses any understanding that we have at the higher levels. Allowing that individual autonomy for those decisions. So the thought here, the takeaway in italics, do I trust my commander? Do I trust my first sergeant? How can those individuals earn my trust? Do I trust my commander? Do I trust my first sergeant? How can those individuals earn my trust? Let's talk about rank a little bit here. We're looking for results, not salutes, as our next high-level takeaway. Again, something that is very vexing for me specifically is the whole OER bullet, the attaboy, looking for something to advance somebody's career, chasing a star, all of those. I don't feel that's appropriate, and I don't feel a good leader should be motivated by that. Within our development as officers in the Army, the whole point of having a promotion, the whole point of having that next rank and being promoted and having that ceremony, it's not for past achievement. Having a next rank is not a reward for having a past achievement. That promotion to that next rank is because of the potential that that individual has and the fact that they're going to succeed at a next level, and they're promoted to that next level because they have that potential and because they've demonstrated the desire for that potential. It's not, I've reached a level, I've been there so many years, whatever, I get promoted to the next rank. No, that happens so often in the Guard, and it vexes me without end. The promotion and the rank should be about that performance and that potential and that future. So again, let's look for results, not salutes. This also, if we remember to the previous book, this isn't solely about results without trust. We have to remember that grid and the 2x2 with the top left, top right, bottom right, and then the one we inserted in the middle about neutral performance, high trust. So when we're considering all of this within the high-level takeaway, it's not we're only looking for results. The purpose is we want everyone to be successful, and hey, if the commander is saluted and said, you've done great, here's your coin, that really belongs to the whole battery. Bighorn as a whole is going to be recognized. And me personally, I'm going to make sure that it's all about Bighorn. It's all about those soldiers at all those levels. It's not about the command team at all. And it shouldn't be. We should take the risk, but we should not take the reward, because really the ownership, it's your unit. So importance of focusing on results should be placed above how the hierarchy works. As I said, we're rewarding the team members who achieve the specific results and not soldiers that blindly follow protocol to motivate the battery. So here we're looking at the overall goal realization within Bighorn. And again, the lesson is leaders are focusing on results, and we're recognizing team members who achieve them. Doesn't matter their rank. I don't care if somebody is a platoon leader, platoon sergeant, or if they're the driver in that launcher, or if they're the box operator. It doesn't matter. At 13 Juliet nerding out that fire mission, they're going to get recognized. And I hope all leaders will see that. Hope all leaders will put them up for recognition. The question and takeaway and the thought here is, when is the last time a soldier was recognized for doing the right thing in front of others? Again, when is the last time a soldier was recognized for doing the right thing in front of others? Let's talk about risk taking. I think that mirrors up pretty well with what we just talked about. For risks, we're talking about calculated risks. So there's a thing within the Army about prudent risk. Is this a risk I should be taking? Have I evaluated it? Is it something that would be helpful or not? We're not talking about a snap decision for a risk. We're not talking about going off and saying, hey, let's see if this works, shoot for the moon. No. The risk is encouraging our team to think creatively and taking those risks, which if we do that, we can identify new ways to improve Bighorn operations. So specifically looking at that creative problem solving, looking at that problem is the solution, looking at that lower level saying, hey, it's yours, own it. What do you want to do? How are we going to change it? The person involved within that problem set has a good idea of how to action it, how to solution it, especially when that individual is the one receiving the training, working with that equipment, being specifically involved. So again, a calculated risk is when we encourage our team to think creatively. Team takes the risk to allow us to identify new ways to improve Bighorn operations. It's not a risk simply to look good. It's a risk to improve the overall goal. The lesson for leaders is leaders should be willing to take calculated risks to drive innovation and improve operations. The old saying of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. that does work, and I am a fan and proponent of that. However, if there's a better way to do something, let's do something. Let's take that next step and actually implement a new idea. Now, the whole purpose and the whole goal of the ownership is not to go into every single little detail and say everything needs to be changed because everything can be better. Yes, I recognize everything can be better. However, leaders should be willing to take that calculated risk to improve Bighorn in terms of what needs to be improved now, in the future, and in the long term. So having that continuum of what we are improving. The takeaway question here is, what is the last prudent risk I took? Was that a proper way to evaluate my risk tolerance? What is the last prudent risk I took? Was that a proper way to evaluate my risk tolerance? We're going to be talking about going beyond the standard operating procedures and standard procedure within Bighorn, which causes a lot of pause to some people. Fully recognize that. I'm not talking about going against an SOP. Hear me clearly. We're not talking about disregarding the SOP. We're talking about going beyond the SOP in terms of exceeding those standards whenever we can. I understand we have checklists. Some things we can't exceed. We have our safety readbacks when we're shooting missions within a controlled environment. Again, we're not going to do those in a nuanced or different way. Those are set, and we need to adhere to those. When I'm talking about going beyond standard procedure, I'm saying, how can we exceed the standards? How is there a way that us specifically can exceed that standard within Bighorn? So exceeding the standard procedures in order to achieve excellence is an important mindset within the unit. I want everyone to encourage all soldiers within Bighorn to think creatively, think through problem sets, and continually challenge the status quo, as we always identify ways to further improve Bighorn. Part of that thinking is, do we have a way to implement and challenge how we are doing something? Is there a better way? If there is, I want everyone to allow that soldier who comes up with it to implement that. If they fail, that's okay. Again, we're not going to look at a critical failure, but I want to look at the failure and why it happened. And then how can we improve upon that? Again, certain risks we're not taking. This goes to the prudent risk we just talked about in terms of going beyond our standard procedure. The lesson and takeaway here is leaders should encourage teams to think creatively and challenge the standard procedures to achieve that higher level of excellence, not being satisfied with the status quo. The question and the takeaway and the thought process for here in italics is, how do I encourage my soldiers to provide outside-the-box solutions to our everyday issues? Again, how do I encourage my soldiers to provide outside-the-box solutions to our everyday issues? Going beyond the standard procedure goes into our next point of building up our people. Everyone within the unit is important. Everyone in the unit also needs something different. Simply because somebody needed something previously, maybe they don't need the same thing. Maybe they need something different at this point in their life, in their career, in their military career. So let's build up all soldiers and support them. Part of building up our soldiers is developing the soldiers, and we provide the tools and resources that all soldiers within Bighorn need to succeed. Part of that is that investment mindset, right? We're investing in the soldier development. We're doing LPDs, OPDs. We're helping soldiers with a new task. We are learning as leaders ourselves something we don't know, so we can hopefully pass that knowledge along to someone else or disrupt something that is currently happening that would be catastrophic in some regard. The point is we're investing in our own development, which means we're investing in Bighorn soldier development so that we can actually build that motivated team, and that team will be a skilled team so that they can actually achieve the mission. So the takeaway for building up our people is really us as leaders supporting soldiers at all levels. The lesson here is leaders should invest in that team development and provide the team with necessary resources to succeed. Having somebody show up and say they're going to run a training is not setting someone up for success and not building up our soldiers. Now, if we identify somebody that will be running a training in 30, 60, 90 days, we tell that soldier, hey, soldier, you're going to be doing this at this time frame. What resources do you need? Let me know how to support you. That's building up our people. Allowing our soldiers to take that ownership, allowing our soldiers to actually implement a plan, and allowing soldiers to succeed based on the resources provided. And then giving that soldier all the credit, because they are the ones that are receiving the credit. They get the rewards, not the leaders. The leaders are merely here to build up the team. The leaders are here to support that team. So the takeaway thought is, when was a recent time I was treated with disrespect? Is that how I want my soldiers to receive my support? Again, when was a recent time I was treated with disrespect? Is that how I want my soldiers to receive my support? Let's talk about unity. I'm talking about unity in terms of teamwork and collaboration. I'm talking about unity in terms of that unified vision, unified purpose, and this desire to actually work together and include everyone. Again, there's no room within Bighorn to have any type of discrimination. There's no room in Bighorn to have people cast out solely because they have a different viewpoint or they have some other mindset about how to do something. No. I want Bighorn to generate unity. And by that, I'm talking about a culture of unity and collaboration and creating a sense of shared purpose and encouraging teamwork. We can work with others even if we have differing views. We can work with others even if we've had negative past experiences. The unity we're talking about is teamwork, collaboration, utilizing that shared sense of purpose. The lesson for creating unity and generating unity is leaders, myself included, leaders at all levels, should develop an understanding of that shared purpose and promote that idea. Again, the vision we talked about before. How are we promoting that idea throughout Bighorn? Again, the ownership level. If somebody wants to own something and change something because they don't understand or they don't agree or something is wrong, they're going to promote that idea. So let's have that shared unified vision and let's have them come together as a team, creating that unity within Bighorn as a team for that solution. The takeaway here is, do I feel as if I fit into the overall battery? Do my soldiers share these feelings of exclusion? How can I change my section to be overall more inclusive? And what is one way I can achieve that result? Again, do I feel as if I fit into the overall Bighorn battery? Do my soldiers share these feelings? How can I change my section to be overall more inclusive? And what is one way I can achieve that result? We talked about it previously, the Washington Post test, and how it's somewhat antiquated in the future potentially. Still, right now, I think it is an adequate way to look at how we're measuring our success. Also, hey, is this something that I'd actually be proud of in the future if it showed up in the Washington Post? Because the secondary portion of this is, once it's on the Washington Post, it's going to be online. It's going to be readily available and people can look at it in perpetuity. So there's two parts to this. The Washington Post test of front page, everyone knows about it, this is terrible. Second part, someone can look it up anytime in the future. And somebody can always look it up and say, hey, this is what happened. And that might be with us for the rest of our careers. So a high level takeaway, talking about the Washington Post test, winning is important, but not at the cost of ethics and integrity. Bighorn is going to keep ourselves in check with the thought of, if what I'm about to do appeared on the front page of the Washington Post tomorrow, would I be proud or embarrassed? So that's one metric in which we can judge our decisions. We can judge what we're doing and see, hey, would I be proud or embarrassed if everyone knew about it? But really, we have a ton of training and there's a lot of thought that goes into what is the actual ethics and integrity within the military. Part of the warrior ethos, part of everything we do, hinges on ethics and integrity. So this is a ability for somebody to say, hey, what's that Washington Post test? And they can use it in the future. So this is another tool we can provide to soldiers, and we can also utilize ourselves when we evaluate everything. So the lesson here for leaders is leaders are always scrutinized, and we have to be able to recognize the risk and be able to live with that scrutiny. The question and takeaway is, do I have a current way to judge my decisions if my actions are seen by the whole world? Again, do I have a current way to judge my decisions if my actions are seen by the whole world? I know we ran through a number of these pretty quickly, so I want to return here to our guided discussion roadmap. For further discussion, again, if we were in person and we could have a dialogue and talk about a number of these things. But the guided discussion that I want everyone to keep in mind as they go forward and as Bighorn continues to implement strategies for improving leadership and improving our culture, building trust, building our teams. These are some of the high-level things for us to think about within our own selves. 1, how do we cultivate trust within Bighorn? 2, is the Washington Post test an actual good metric? 3, what is the difference between a prudent risk and an unnecessary risk? 4, when we step out of a leadership role, is a 6-month to 12-month metric a proper or helpful way to view success as a leader? 5, if we aren't listening aggressively, what are we actually doing instead? Lastly, as an organization, are we comfortable with failure? Are we comfortable with listening to soldiers when better ideas are presented? Are we comfortable with allowing soldiers the space to grow when it is painful for higher levels? Are we comfortable with taking the heat or the hit as appropriate from higher levels in order to allow soldier development? The big takeaway is, how are we going to make Bighorn better going forward? How is Bighorn going to improve based upon what we've talked about, what we've thought about, what we've learned, or what we've seen for the first time? Again, thank you all for being here, for wanting to improve Bighorn. I appreciate everyone within this unit. Let's continue to make it better. Destined to climb.